A pleasure to meet all at last. And so, as I've said before, I will actually go into detail discussing a certain old school duology followed by a 2008 reboot of a popular Native American franchise. If you're familiar with something known by the name Turok, well, you probably know where I'm getting at here. It's a popular first-person shooter with dinosaurs in it. Kind of similar in a way to Jurassic the Hunted, which I've talked about a lot over the years. Though I will admit, even though Turok hadn't caught on to me that much, it's still important to know that Jurassic the Hunted mainly took a lot of inspiration from Turok, utilizing first-person shooters and dinosaurs mixed together. And while there's other games out there that have since come to existence, including Ark Survival Evolved, which I talked a lot about as well as Dino D-Day, which is set in World War II and featured dinosaurs, and there was also another shooter-based game with dinosaurs known as Primal Carnage. But a lot of the other things are more or less PC sort of things. Turok was in fact among the first to utilize first-person shooters and dinosaurs put together. And since then, it has made more than just pure history in the books. Turok was in fact the unique tale of a legendary Native American warrior whom in fact utilized survival skills and instinct as a means to keep himself alive in a time where prehistory was still making history. And while the story of Turok does date back to the 90s in terms of when most people would remember, the fact is that the full story of Turok actually goes all the way back to 1954. So think about that. Turok is as old as Godzilla and Fast and the Furious, if you want to count the serial made in that same year. But regardless of all that, Turok at first was put together through a lot of comics over the years, mainly Valiant comics. But when Acclaim, a popular developer, had come around over the years and probably wasn't real good for what it did, Acclaim, which at the time was known as Acclaim Entertainment and spelled with C's instead of with K's, they would come around in the 90s, not only purchasing the infamous LJN toys, but they would also allow for a multitude of possibilities to come around during the N64 days. And with Turok being one of them, it certainly was quite a choice to make here. And just think, Acclaim had made other possibilities happen, including a bunch of Simpsons games, as well as Mortal Kombat in some ways, but Turok was actually a different paradigm shift than would most have expected. Because after all, a couple years before Turok was released on the N64 in 1997, Acclaim would actually purchase Valiant Comics, retitling them to Acclaim Comics, thereby claiming the rights to Turok, the property itself. So, after more than 40 years of time, they basically came to be purchased by LJN's own, I guess, offspring / successor. When you think about that, it's kind of wicked. But let's not get too off topic here, because a good history lesson on how Turok first came to be on game consoles is one thing, but the thing is that in March 1997, I will say that for the time that it came out in, Turok itself, or Turok Dinosaur Hunter as its full title is, implied as on the title screen, on loading screens, and etc., it's still a really unique piece. One thing to be marveled at. It has garnered a lot of possible iterations. But in terms of how this whole thing works, I was able to pick this up, as well as the sequel, Turok 2 Seeds of Evil, for a relatively decent price on the PlayStation Store, because they weren't really made available on PlayStation Plus, which is kind of off, but I basically had to deal with that. Anyways though, the plot itself does involve Talset, whom is actually the official name given to them by the Native Americans, but Turok is seemingly the name that everybody seems to remember him by, and as a result, that's what we have here. But the plot does revolve around him time traveling and essentially going into prehistory to stop some sort of campaigner as well as the chronoceptor from falling into the wrong hands. So, essentially speaking, it's that same old plot. You have a bad guy trying to steal an ancient artifact and try to dominate the world in history, yada yada yada, and then you have another guy coming in to try and sabotage his evil plans. It's that same old sort of stuff that, while it's still effective at what it does, on the basis of storytelling, as well as all the unique characteristics of any given story. Plots, character, conflict, theme, setting. Yeah, I could never get that hip-hop song out of my head when talking about how movies are made, or anything really. Anyways though, for what it is, and from what I managed to get through at the moment, since I have yet to beat this, unfortunately, Turok Dinosaur Hunter is still a pretty decent game. When all things considered, its first-person shooter capabilities work well, its control functions, not entirely optimized for PlayStation use, but N64 is a very different console after all. And on top of that, there are some disadvantages of the game itself. Controls can get a bit clunked up, and I will say that the audio is kind of fuzzy, even by today's standards. But keep in mind that 1997 was a pretty good amount of time that has passed. But when you think about it, there's plenty of other games that I played that came around during that same time. There was the original Final Fantasy VII, Rallycross, Abe's Odyssey, and if I am mistaken, it's only a year before Spyro the Dragon first came out. And I could go on with this further, but what's really the point? Turok Dinosaur Hunter has somewhat had a lot to live up to. And while today you can expect any game to be a masterpiece, back then there were only so many that were deemed as masterpieces. But keep in mind, Generation 5 of consoles still proved to be a lot harder than expected. Very hardy. And that's why I'm more than glad to include this as an inclusion in this series. So going through a lot of the puzzle elements, picking up a lot of items, as well as ammo and new weapons, going from pistols to shotguns, grenade launchers, bow and arrow, yeah, that's probably one of the most effective weapons you can possibly find. Appropriate for his Native Americanism? I'd suppose, given the context of his background and the lore situated on Turok himself. Not to mention the fact that if you had followed along with the comics, you might find a few unique pieces of information about him in the game, as well as the sequels. But overall, for what it is, I feel like that maybe an hour or two had passed up until the point in which that I had moved on. So I can't really say that I have finished it, nor could I say that I will finish it in the near future. But hey, at least I was able to play a good amount of time worth until I was able to essentially get to the 5th level. So, not too hard when you think about it, but it also does tend to get a bit uneasy, knowing only a couple bosses have gone through, including a T-Rex. But then of course with many of the other dinosaurs around, including the Dilo, the Raptor, and smaller dinosaurs as well, it sure is quite a feast for the eyes, and somehow for the ears as well. But for the moment, when I finish it, beat the campaigner, and rescue the artifact, I will have completed more than just a tidbit of history. But for tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about the sequel, Seeds of Evil. For my rating of the first game, however, we'll just simply leave it at a good 7.0. A nice way to balance the scale here without going too low or too high. So, I guess I'll probably update the score, as it says, in the comment section below to let you guys know my final scoring on the game itself, since I do have yet left to beat it. When I do though, maybe all this would change, and it'll probably be different. For now though, this is just where we're left at here. So come around tomorrow, and I will have Turok 2 Seeds of Evil ready to go, and on the channel.